So, in the Heisman Trophy race, there are two runaway candidates, and Jayden Daniels is one of them. So, let's break it down. Let's break down the numbers. Let's break down the resume. And I might just further prove to you why Jayden Daniels deserves the Heisman Trophy.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, what's up, y'all? Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, Locked On LSU, we are part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day. My name is Caroline Fenton, and I am your host, as I am every single day. And let's get into it because we're writing a Heisman Trophy resume, because we are currently actively creating a Heisman Trophy campaign, rightfully so, for Jayden Daniels. And after week 12 of college football, going into rivalry week, the final week of the regular season, Jayden Daniels is one of two runaway candidates for the Heisman Trophy. And just looking at the sports books, Jayden Daniels currently is your Heisman Trophy favorite. Just think about that. Honestly, just savor that for a second. The fact that the quarterback who is quarterbacking your team right now is now currently the betting favorite going into the final week of the season for the Heisman Trophy. Crazy. Crazy. So Jayden Daniels is currently the favorite at minus 110. Bo Nix, Oregon's quarterback, of course, you may recognize his name, formerly at Auburn, is the second favorite for the Heisman Trophy. Now, when I checked a couple days ago, he was at plus 150 odds, but those odds have actually improved to plus 125. Jayden Daniels has stayed the same as the favorite at minus 110, but Bo Nix's odds have crept up there just a little bit over the past couple of days. Now, looking at the rest of the field, Michael Penix Jr., quarterback at Washington, he's the third best odds at plus 600. And then you've got a massive drop off between the rest of the field. Marvin Harrison, which I don't even know why we're having a Heisman Trophy conversation about Marvin Harrison. Like, can we be completely honest? If his name was not Marvin Harrison, would we even really be pushing the Heisman Trophy for campaign for Marvin Harrison that hard? He's not even the best receiver in college football, so I don't really know what we're talking about him as the best player in college football. But whatever. Plus 5,000 odds for Marvin Harrison Jr., Carson Beck, quarterback at Georgia, plus 8,000, and then Jalen Milroe, quarterback at Alabama, plus 15,000. So as you can see, it's Jayden Daniels and it's Bo Nix, and that's really it. Michael Penix Jr., of course, after what he did against Oregon State this past weekend, he's going to get an invite to New York. Absolutely. He has the third best odds to win the trophy. But really, it's Jayden Daniels and Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. on the outside looking in, and then it's everybody else. Then it's the field. There are some doofuses on Twitter, maybe some Oregon homers on Twitter that have said that, and I'm not even going to say his name because it's not even worth saying, that Jayden Daniels wouldn't even hold a clipboard at Oregon or Washington, which I think is really interesting because Jayden Daniels used to play in that conference and beat Oregon when they played head-to-head. So I don't really know how the case for that, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about that. Jayden Daniels versus Bo Nix. Let's break down the stats. Let's break down the numbers. Because I think there are several elements to the Heisman Trophy. One is numbers. One is just simply the eye test. We know the eye test for Jayden Daniels. I don't know what more he needs to do. And the kid is freaking electric, and he makes every single thing that he does something miraculous, something that's never been done before. Makes it look easy. He passes the eye test with flying colors, but let's compare the numbers. Jayden Daniels currently sits at 3,577 passing yards. That is third best in all of college football. Bo Nix, 3,539. So just slightly below Jayden Daniels with the fourth most passing yards in all of college football. Jayden Daniels has thrown 36 passing touchdowns. It's the best in college football. The number one spot. No other quarterback in all of the sport has thrown more passing touchdowns than Jayden Daniels has. Bo Nix, 35. Second best, just behind Jayden Daniels. Now, this is what I think is really astonishing. You know, I'm always one of those people when we talk about stats versus analytics. I think that analytics always have a place in sports. I'm not one of those people that completely says, like none of that. I'm not an old school person, but I'm also not like full send Moneyball. I always say I look at analytics and say, how is it supplementing what I can see with my eyes? I've had co-hosts before that solely rely on analytics. And I think sometimes we can pick the numbers apart so much and we can analyze them so much and add in all these different factors and numbers and multiply them by all of these different things that it comes up with a result that isn't even really true. Like analytics that, for example, perfect example. I do radio in Nashville. I cover the Tennessee Titans. When DeAndre Hopkins was kind of going through his free agency tour of the offseason, we were breaking down the numbers to see that, really how good is DeAndre Hopkins truly, because the Titans were in, obviously, he plays for the Titans now. The Titans were in on the DeAndre Hopkins sweepstakes. There was an analytic that showed that DeAndre Hopkins was like the 74th most efficient receiver in all of college football. And by that same metric, Justin Jefferson was in like the 40s. I'm like, that's just dumb analytic. Like, I can see with my own eyes that Justin Jefferson is better than the 40th best receiver in all of the NFL. Like, I can see with my eyes that DeAndre Hopkins, even though he might be old, even though older, on the older side of NFL years, and even though he might not be who he was a few years ago, he's still a damn good receiver. Like, I don't need an analytic to tell me that Justin Jefferson is the 40th best receiver in all of the NFL. So I don't always like to live and die by the analytics, not necessarily the numbers, but the analytics. But when we talk about efficiency, in terms of passing efficiency, Jayden Daniels is 208.34. That is the highest passer efficiency since they've tracked that metric. Like no other quarterback since they started tracking pass efficiency, which I don't know when that was. It had to have been at least 10 years. Can we say like a 10 to 15 year span is probably fair? Jayden Daniels is the highest ever that has ever been tracked. So he's number one, obviously. Bo Nix, it's a pretty steep drop up there, 191.35. Now, Bo Nix, to be fair, is the second highest passer efficiency, but the fact that Jayden Daniels is breaching that 200 mark in terms of passer efficiency, I think, is incredibly telling. QBR, Jayden Daniels leads the country, 94.9. Bo Nix, third, behind, of course, Jayden Daniels at 1 and J.J. McCarthy, quarterback at Michigan, and 2, 89.8. When it comes to the passing numbers, I mean, there's really no comparison here. Jayden Daniels has better passing numbers than Bo Nix in every single statistical category. The only advantage that I would say Bo Nix has in passing is completion percentage. Jayden Daniels' completion percentage is 72.6 versus Bo Nix at 78.1. But Jayden Daniels leads in yards, in touchdown, in QBR. I mean, we're going to compare the two advantage to Jayden Daniels. But it doesn't stop at just passing. There's a really important element of Jayden Daniels' game specifically that I did not mention. And those numbers, I think, separate Jayden Daniels more than anything. And we'll get into that coming up next after a couple of words from our sponsors. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. And you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And it is so super easy to create a new job listing with LinkedIn Jobs. Just go to linkedin.com, add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Plus, they've got simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and to hire. The year is wrapping up January and the new year is quickly approaching, and you want to find that right team member that can have a positive and measurable impact on your business to end the year and to start 2024 off with a bang. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day, and some very exciting things happening over at the Locked On Network. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Stick around here because that will be coming up next. All right, let's get back into it. Jayden Daniels versus Bo Nix. It's really based off of the sports books. It's a two-man race at this point for the Heisman Trophy. Jayden Daniels has better passing stats in every single statistical category except completion percentage. Bo Nix 78.1 and Jayden Daniels 72.6. But what I didn't mention was just passing stats. If we just mentioned passing, which Jayden Daniels has an advantage, we haven't even touched on one of the most important elements of Jayden Daniels' game, and that's the run. And that is where things really start to separate themselves. Jayden Daniels leads the nation in rushing yards and quarterbacks in rushing yards. 1,014 rushing yards. He also leads the nation of any running back, quarterback, running back, any player that has touched the ball this season leads the nation in yards per carry at 818. Over 1,000 rushing yards from a quarterback. I mean, he's in the top 20 of rushers as a whole. Bo Nix, 128. 128 rushing yards on the season. To put that into perspective, Jayden Daniels has had more rushing yards against Florida than Bo Nix has had all season. Jayden Daniels had more rushing yards against Alabama than Bo Nix has had all season. Jayden Daniels had more rushing yards against Missouri than Bo Nix has had all season long. And that doesn't even count the number of games where Jayden Daniels has rushed for nearly 100 yards. Georgia State, 96 and not even a complete game. Auburn, 93. Ole Miss, 99. I mean, Jayden Daniels blows Bo Nix out of the water. Jayden Daniels blows every single quarterback out of the water in terms of his rushing yards. But if we're looking at a Heisman Trophy resume, you have to look at that. The overwhelming difference and the overwhelming advantage that Jayden Daniels has with the rushing stats. Let's continue to look at some numbers here. Passing and rushing. Jayden Daniels, yards with 500 yards. Games with 500 or more yards. Jayden Daniels has 3 of them. He did it against Ole Miss, he did it against Georgia State, and he did it against Florida. Bo Nix, number of games with 500 or more yards. 0. Not a single game on Oregon's schedule has Bo Nix racked up 500 or more yards. Okay, let's look at 350-yard games. 350 or more. That's passing and rushing combined. Jayden Daniels has combined for 350 or more yards total in every single game on LSU's schedule except for Army and for Grambling. And against Grambling, because he didn't play total games in those games. Against Grambling, he had 295 in one half. He was on pace for 600 total yards against Grambling. But of course, as we know, he came out early against Army and Grambling because Garrett Nussmeier got some work. The backups got some work. So 9 games this season, Jayden Daniels has combined for 350 or more yards. Keep in mind who that came against. Number 4, Florida State. And I'm not talking when they played this team. I'm talking now. Number 4, Florida State. Number 8, Alabama. Number 9, Missouri. Number 13, Ole Miss. And there's going to be college football playoff rankings that come out tonight, so those numbers are going to change. But as of now, as time of recording and time of posting, Jayden Daniels racked up 350 plus yards against number 13, Ole Miss, number 9, Mizzou, number 4, Florida State, number 8, Alabama. He had over 500 yards against number 13, Ole Miss. Let's look at Bo Nix. He had 5. Not bad. Not bad. But in those 5 games where Bo Nix combined for over 350 yards, that came against a 3-8 Arizona State team. That came against USC, good team. They have the 113th ranked pass defense in college football. It came against a 5-6 Cal team with the 125th ranked pass defense in college football. It came against a 6-5 Texas Tech team. Now, I would give Bo Nix credit. He did have 350 plus yards against Washington, the number 5 team in the country. He had 351. I mean, when you look at that, it truly is not even close. The numbers, the impact, the eye test, it's not even close between Jayden Daniels and Bo Nix. Jayden Daniels has done way more impressive things. Now, let me strengthen my argument even more. Add a little bit more perspective to those numbers. And we'll do that coming up next before we get to a couple of words from our sponsors. I want to tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the most fun that I have had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season by playing daily fantasy. And now you can play during basketball season too. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and then place your entry. And if you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players, like rapper Meek Mill, hello, who wouldn't want to do that? Comedian Andrew Schultz as well, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in Prize Picks community each week. Like I mentioned, basketball season is here. Now you can pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So, for example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3 points made and receptions. Prize Picks, there is so much to offer, and it is so much fun. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, running along here on Locked On LSU, Jayden Daniels and Bo Nix are the overwhelming favorites to win the Heisman Trophy. Jayden Daniels has better passing stats. Jayden Daniels has overwhelmingly better rushing stats. Like I said, Jayden Daniels, 1,014 rushing yards on the season. Bo Nix, measly 128. Jayden Daniels has 3 games this season where he has racked up himself 500 or more yards. Bo Nix hasn't done that a single time. Jayden Daniels has racked up 350 or more yards in every game this season except against Army and Grambling when he left the games early. Bo Nix did that only 5 times. 4 of them came against teams with either losing records or against teams that have one of the worst passing defenses in all of college football. But now, let's get into what I think is actually maybe even the best argument. Consider those numbers. Consider the opponents. I touched on that, where Bo Nix had his best games against a 3-8 struggling Arizona State in Kenny Dillingham's first year, against a struggling Cal team who is now sitting at 5-6 with one of the worst pass defenses in college football. A USC team, which, has the reigning Heisman Trophy winner on the team, one of the better offenses in college football, but the 113th ranked passing defense in the country. Bo Nix's best games came against their easiest opponents. Jayden Daniels doesn't matter if you're playing a top 25 Alabama, Missouri, Ole Miss, Florida State. Jayden Daniels has been consistently dominant against all of these opponents. And put that into perspective. It depends on what metric you're using. Let's look at several different metrics. Strength of schedule. According to the ESPN FPI, LSU has the 10th hardest schedule in all of college football. Oregon, the 63rd strength of schedule in all of college football. There are different metrics that look at different things. Some say that LSU has the number one strength of schedule in all of college football. By that same metric, Oregon has the 15th ranked strength of schedule. Still incredibly difficult, but not nearly as difficult as LSU's. I know a lot of people have talked about, non-LSU fans have talked about Jayden Daniels stat padding against lower level opponents. Well, he didn't play entire games against Army or Grambling. Like I mentioned, those are the only two games on LSU's schedule where Jayden Daniels has not racked up 350 or more yards. But let's look at the Georgia State game, because that's when people were saying, oh, he's stat padding. I'm not impressed by what he did against a Georgia State team. Well, Jayden Daniels attempted 30 passes against Georgia State. Bo Nix this past week against Arizona State, same week that LSU played Georgia State, attempted 29. So get out of here with the stat padding, because Bo Nix was in just as long as Jayden Daniels was. Let's look at top 25 opponents, because if we want to talk about stat padding, fine, throw those out. Throw that out. Throw out all of the non-top 25 opponents. Let's just look at production against top 25 teams. Jayden Daniels, passing 1,694 yards, 13 touchdowns. Bo Nix, 607 yards, 5 touchdowns. Bo Nix's production against top 25 teams is about a third of what Jayden Daniels is. What are we doing, guys? What are we doing? Passing, Jayden Daniels, advantage. Rushing, overwhelming advantage, Jayden Daniels. Strength of schedule, advantage, LSU. Production against top teams in the country, advantage, Jayden Daniels. It feels like it's a much closer race than maybe the numbers might indicate. And if the only thing that is making a Heisman Trophy voter, like the Nimrod on Twitter who said that Jayden Daniels wouldn't even hold a clipboard at Oregon and Washington, first of all, if that's the case, then you have horrendous evaluators of talent. But if the only thing is record, what are we doing? This is an individual award. And if we're looking at individual stats, Jayden Daniels is far and beyond the better quarterback. It's far and beyond more deserving for the Heisman Trophy. If I'm the Heisman Trust, the last thing that I want to do is make this an award as the best player on the best team or the quarterback on the best team, because you and I both know very well the best player on the best team isn't necessarily the best player in college football. And you and I both know good and well, as the Heisman has showed us in history, that just because you're not the best team doesn't mean you don't have the best player in the country. Robert Griffin III, that was a Baylor team that lost 3 games. The best player in the country won the Heisman Trophy. Tim Tebow at Florida, that team lost 3 games. Tim Tebow was still the best player in the country. Who am I missing here? Lamar Jackson, best player in the country. That team still lost 3 games and got whooped by LSU in a bowl game. The Louisville team wasn't that great. They lost to Kentucky, a not very good Kentucky team at the end of the season. I think that if Bo Nix does win the Heisman Trophy or Michael Penix Jr. does win the Heisman Trophy, then that is more telling to me than anything. That the Heisman Trophy is now an award that goes to the quarterback on the best team. Fine. I think that's what the Heisman Trophy was intended to be. The Heisman Trophy was intended to go to the best player in college football. Jayden Daniels is the best player in college football. You can poke 0 holes in that argument. If your one argument is, well, his team lost 3 games, Jayden Daniels can't tackle. Okay? So, what are we doing? I know that this is Locked On LSU and that I'm preaching to the choir here, but if anyone had any sort of doubt, if the bozo Oregon beat writers on Twitter made you think any differently, don't let that distract you from the numbers and the facts and the statistics and the analytics and all of the concrete arguments that Jayden Daniels has to win the Heisman Trophy. That is going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And stick around because coming up next, you will get a sneak peek at Locked On Sports Today. It's Locked On's first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube. It'll be here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Coming up in tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU, I am banging on the drum for Jayden Daniels to win the Heisman because he deserves it. But let's give credit where credit is due to the rest of this offense, to our two Biletnikoff semifinalists. I will make my case for Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, and we will do that coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.